The Helicarrier found itself under attack by Loki's forces. The room that the Avengers were in had all but been decimated, with everyone being scattered in multiple directions. The Helicarrier was being attacked on all fronts, and as a result, emergency landing was going to have to be put into order in the worst case scenario. With one of the rotator wings being damaged in the process, Stark and Rogers would go outside and attempt to fix it. Meanwhile, in the midst of all of the destruction and chaos, Dr. Banner had been knocked into a lower part of the Helicarrier, and due to the stressful environment, was starting to go under the transformation. Despite Natasha's best efforts, along with Blukik and Dribba attempting to keep Dr. Banner calm, the only thing they could do was run for their lives when the doctor would tell them to get away, as he felt the transformation of the Hulk starting to take form. Possessed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents would battle against other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, the Helicarrier now turning into more of a battlefield than anything else. All the while, Loki simply sat in his cell. The Avengers. Earth's mightiest heroes. At least that's what they thought of themselves. But for Loki, he knew the truth. They were nothing more but egomaniacs who couldn't comprehend things far beyond their capabilities. Each one believing that they were the center of their universe, that they were the most important out of all of them. In the end, egos clash, agendas change. Loki could tell from the moment that they all stood together, they were destined to be driven apart. Because they had no form of trust, no form of loyalty, no form of structure, nothing. They were just wayward creatures who had all been called together in some half-assed attempt to try and get in his way. But he had planned ahead. He was smarter than all of them, and now the plan was coming to fruition. They were all fighting each other, fighting themselves. They didn't know who or what to trust. And meanwhile, all Loki had to do was sit in his cell. A cell that was rather useless in the grand scheme of things, but better to simply wait and allow his enemies to do all the work for him. The Hulk would begin to go on a rampage within the Helicarrier, with Thor and Ben being called for assistance immediately. Thor would attempt to speak reason with Dr. Banner. However, in his transformed monstrous state, that was a lot easier said than done. Ben would go on the offensive as he transformed into Diamond Head. Recalling his fight with Dr. Banner a little over 4 years ago, and his experience in battling against the Abomination, Ben knew that he had to be careful with the aliens that he picked. It wasn't so much about getting into a full-on fight with the Hulk that he was worried about. It was the fact that they were in the Helicarrier, thousands of feet in the air with nowhere for them to land. If he and the Hulk were to cause irreparable damage to the ship, it would send them crashing and would put the lives of everyone on board in jeopardy. Using his crystallized form, Ben would attempt to create barriers around the Hulk, keeping him in place and trying to subdue him. As Thor would come in for the assistance, the two working together to wrangle down the massive green monster of a man. Of course, in the midst of their tussle, Thor would have worries about Loki. Knowing that all of this was likely his doing, there was the potential for him to escape. Ben would give the all clear for Thor to go on ahead and to deal with his brother, noting that he had more than enough capability of fending off the Hulk and getting him under control. Leaving him to it, Thor would immediately rush to the holding cell where Loki was being kept, while Ben would continue his battle with the Beast. Fights were breaking out all across the Helicarrier, the Black Widow engaging with Hawkeye, Iron Man and Captain America attempting to fix one of the rudders of the Helicarrier while dealing with more of Loki's thugs, and there was Thor himself heading to the direction of his brother, the trickster god in question. Although, he himself would be the one to be tricked, as he would be led into a lured trap to where Loki's cell was, with now him on the inside, and Loki baiting him with nothing but a mere illusion. However, Agent Coulson would arrive with a newly made weapon, personally designed after the Destroyer had come to Earth, and with all of their other run-ins with powerful alien and otherworldly creatures, the weapon was built specifically for a threat of that magnitude. Although, sadly enough for Agent Coulson, he wasn't fast enough to shoot at Loki, and effectively enough, he was stabbed in the back, Loki's scepter protruding through his chest and caving in his heart. As Agent Coulson fell to the ground, with Thor trapped inside of the prison cell with no chance of saving him, Loki took time to gloat. I don't know why you're so surprised, brother. You should have known that this would be the outcome. Had you just listened to reason, or better yet, stayed out of my way, you could have been spared all of this. You call yourself Earth's champion. Well, so much for that. The humans think us immortal. Shall we test that, brother? With one fell swoop, the prisoned cage would be released from the helicarrier, as it would descend to the ground below. As Agent Coulson lay dying, he did get Loki's attention, and he warned him that things were not going to go the way he wanted. You're not going to win, Agent Coulson would say. Victory is already mine. I don't know how else to put it to you. You lie, dying on the ground. Your forces have been scattered. Your so-called protectors, dismembered. Scattered like the ashes to the wind. Tell me, where is my defeat? It will come because you lack conviction. I am more than confident enough to say that I am just... Thankfully enough, Coulson baited him long enough to fire the shot. It probably wasn't going to be enough to kill, but a way to stun, to buy time, to go down fighting. That was all that Coulson knew. It was how he was trained. He thought about a lot of things in that moment. The life he had lived with Fury, S.H.I.E.L.D., being trained by Max Tennyson, all the adventures he'd gone on, all the missions, everything that led to this moment. But then he also thought about Ben. This probably was going to devastate the boy in so many ways. Ben had been through a lot of things in his life for someone so young, although the death of someone he cared about, that was definitely a first. But it would only be the first of many. Living in this sort of lifestyle, oftentimes you have to face this kind of reality. The reality where everyone doesn't get to make it home. But he had faith. He had faith that Ben would be able to step up when he was needed. He, along with Fury and many others, had full belief in Ben Tennyson, that he was truly the hero that the world would need in that moment, and that he wouldn't be fighting alone. As Ben would continue his tussle with the Hulk, as the helicarrier eventually arrived over landfall, Hulk would then be thrown out of the ship, crashing down far below them into some abandoned building. As Ben was helping to round up the last of Loki's agents, he would get a call through the intercoms. Agent Coulson was down. Ben immediately rushed through the helicarrier as fast as his legs could take him, as he arrived to see Fury holding Coulson in his arms. Mr. Coulson! Ben rushed to him. Without hesitation, Ben immediately turned to his Omnitrix. Scanning through the aliens as fast as he could, he immediately transformed into Accelerate, grabbing up Mr. Coulson's body and taking him to the medical facility of the helicarrier. There were staff that were looking over the injured and other mortally wounded as Ben laid him onto the table and called for the staff immediately. Doctor! I need a doctor! Quick! Do something! A few medical members would arrive over to Coulson's side as they immediately began setting up an IV and began addressing the wound. Come on, Mr. Coulson. He'll be all right. Come on, you can fight this. You can do this. I promise. You're gonna be okay. Ben, I'm here. I promise. It's gonna be all right. You're gonna be okay. Come on. Guys, can we do something? We're working as fast as we could. Come on. Fury finally arrived as he put his hand on Ben's shoulder. Ben transforming back into a human as Coulson's blood was staining his white jacket. As he held to his hand, the doctors immediately ushering Ben out of the room as they did the best they could. Ben simply sat outside, impatient, waiting, looking on. He was gonna be all right. He had to be. Ben had known Agent Coulson for as long as he could remember having this Omnitrix. Sure, he was a bit odd at times, even a little goofy, but he was someone that Ben had truly grown to respect and admire, someone he cared about. It wasn't uncommon for Coulson to check in on Ben from time to time, to call and ask how he was doing. After all, Coulson had a connection to his grandpa as the one that trained him, and in a way, Coulson looked out for Ben just as Max had done for him. Whenever he was in a pinch, whatever situation that might befall him, Coulson was just there. There was even a time when at Ben's own high school, Coulson actually took over as being the principal for a while. That was when they were dealing with yet another alien invasion, a story for a different day. The thing is, they'd been through so much. And right now, Ben, all he could do was wait. It was just then, however, that Ben had an idea. Coulson's vitals were starting to go down. It wasn't looking good for him, and they feared the worst. Ben would search through the Omnitrix, through all the alien combinations that he had, before he finally found it. Why hadn't he thought of this sooner? He was such an idiot. He immediately transformed into the cumbersome alien known as Clockwork. As he opened the door immediately, Fury turned around to see what had happened. As Ben entered into the room, Clockwork would close his eyes, telling everyone to stay quiet and allow him to concentrate. A beam of energy would form around all those who had been wounded and severely harmed. As Clockwork, using his massive and extensive power over time itself, would begin to reverse the flow of time on all of their bodies. Slowly, each person was beginning to be healed, and for Coulson, in the excruciating pain that he was in, feeling as though he were just moments away from slipping into the verge of death, he felt a weird relief. It felt as though his body was going through the inverse, from where he had been stabbed and where the blade had protruded out. It felt as though his organs were slowly being reattached to themselves. The blood flow forming and recirculating within his own system. Until eventually, he felt that he was back. He was alive, and this time better than ever. As Clockwork finished healing everyone, immediately Ben would transform back into his human form. To use his power in that form and magnitude, it really took a lot out of him. Honestly, if it hadn't been for the desperate situation he found himself, he might not have even thought to use that ability. As for Fury, he was just in stunned silence at what he'd seen. For so long, he always treated Ben like he was a kid, and rightfully so he was. Someone that he felt he always had to look out for. Someone that he didn't think truly understood what he was capable of doing. But now he just seemed what was akin to a damn miracle. He knew the truth. There was no way of saving Agent Coulson's life. For better or for worse, Fury resigned himself to the fact that his best friend was just moments away from dying. And now Ben had managed to pull even this off. He was just at a loss for words. He felt powerless. He couldn't do anything. And this is what Ben was capable of. While Coulson and others would be recovering, so too would Hawkeye. He had been restrained in one of the medical wings. In his fight with Widow, she'd managed to hit him in the head hard enough to undo what Loki had done to it. And now he was slowly regaining his mental faculties. As for Cap and Steve, when they got back onto the bridge and they heard about what had happened to Coulson, they too had immediately feared the worst. But hearing how Ben had been able to save him, well, their impressions of him had certainly changed at that point. As Cap would place his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You did a fine job, son. You saved the lives of many people aboard this helicarrier. You should be proud." "I'm still pissed. I almost lost my friend. Loki, these games, they have to stop," Tony said to them. "This game of cat and mouse, all of it needs to end. And Loki, he seemingly got what he wanted. But is this what he wanted?" Steve would say. He was trying to play divide and conquer, try to tear us apart, but he knows he has to take us out to win. Whether he likes it or not, Ben is still a threat. I mean, look what he was able to do on just a small scale. Without a doubt, unless there's something else out there in this world that I've never heard of, I think the Omnitrix might be the most powerful weapon in the universe. That's what Azimuth said. But I've never felt like that, though, Ben said to them. There's still so much about it that I don't know. And he believes you're naive, Steve would say. He treats you like a kid. He thinks you are one. But you're so much more than that. You're a hero. And I think you're going to be the key to turning the tide in this fight. Stark, what's his next play going to be? He's already gathered everything he needs to stabilize the Tesseract. If he's going to use that to open some portal, he's going to want to cause as much damage as possible. For Loki, this is all just theatrics. It's a show to him. He doesn't just want to beat us. He gloats. He enjoys what he does. He wants to be seen beating us. He wants to have this grand war. It's the way he's been talking this whole time. The way he acts. He treats this like this is some type of theater. And this is the opening night, the curtain call. He wants to beat us. He wants to be seen beating us. He wants to be the king. He wants a big-ass tower scouring to the sky with his name on it, and... Son of a bitch. They knew what Loki was going to do. They knew where he was going to be. In the early morning, as the sun began to rise over the city of New York, its peaceful citizens walking and carrying about in their day, unaware of the trouble that was set to befall them. Dr. Selvig was finishing the final touches on the device, pointed directly at the top of Stark Towers. Have the final preparations been put into place? Loki would ask. Oh yes, it's all going according to plan. It's going to show us everything. A new world. Indeed, Doctor. Make sure that the device is running and that's fully operational. Loki looked up into the sky to see someone flying towards him. The man in the iron suit. But he did something rather peculiar. Instead of charging directly towards Loki, he arrived to the landing pad and immediately began to disarm himself. This was rather perplexing, but still, Loki decided that he would play along with this charade of his. Whatever he was up to, it wasn't going to work. Tony strolled into his living room, seeing the mad god himself waiting for him, scepter in hand. He ignored him and merely walked past to the shelf towards the back, his own personal bar, grabbing 2 glasses and a bottle of brandy. You're looking to have a drink? Yeah, you want one? I got more than enough. You like it with ice or without ice, or stalling won't change anything. Oh, this isn't stalling. This is threatening. Seriously, you don't want a drink? You're lost. I'm taking one. Hold that. Really takes the edge off, you know? You have been a pain in my ass, Loki. But you probably already know that. But let's do a head count. There's your brother, the demigod, a soldier who's a living legend and really lives up to that legend, a couple of master assassins, a few agents, a guy with breathtaking anger issues, and a boy who at the age of 10 was given seemingly the most powerful weapon in the universe. And you, my good friend, you have managed to piss off every single one of them. That was the plan. Not a good plan. Because you see, right now, they're on their way. And when they get here, they're gonna come for you. I have an army. We have a Hulk. And that's not even the scariest thing. But I thought the beast had wandered off. No, Loki, I don't think you understand. There's no throne, all right? There is literally no version of this where you come out on top. Doesn't matter what big of an army you got. Doesn't matter how powerful your forces are. Maybe it's too much for us to handle. Maybe it's too much for us to overcome. But you can be damn well sure of one thing. If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure that we'll avenge it. You've already lost. You just don't realize it yet. I've lost. Funny. I wonder how much of a loss it's going to be for you. When you serve as my right-hand man, you have a lot of fancy devices here, and I believe it would be perfect for my army. So, you can do the pleasure of killing your friends for me. Because how are they ever going to get to me when they're too busy fighting you? Loki would tap the scepter on the Stark's chest, tapping it once, tapping it twice, 3 times, rather perplexed that it wasn't working. Although Stark would attribute it to performance issues, and there's always a 1 out of 5 chance, and before he even had a chance to finish his diatribe, Loki grabbed him by the throat and threw him right out the window, with Stark immediately calling for his latest updated armor, the Mark 7, that would immediately shoot out like a rocket, catching him before he hit the ground as he loaded up into his armor and flew right back to where Loki was. And there's one more person you pissed off. His name's Phil, and he sends his regards. With that, Stark would easily shoot Loki out of his room before turning his attention to Dr. Selvig and the device that unfortunately he had no way of stopping. He looked up as the device became active, shooting a powerful ray of energy into the sky, the power of the Tesseract being used on full display. And in broad daylight, the people of New York watched as what appeared to be a hole opening in the air began to give way. And what was coming out on the other side was rather unsettling. It looked like an army straight from the lower depths of hell, raining down on the city itself. For Loki, this is what he had been waiting for. The war was now upon them. This concludes Ben 10 Ultimate Heroes. What If Ben 10 was in the MCU? Season 1, Part 4. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we conclude with Ben 10 Ultimate Heroes. What If Ben 10 was in the MCU? Season 1, Part 5, the Season 1 finale. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, signing off, and I'll see you next time.